right, the video you guys have been waiting for. We're finally gonna get to our harness. We got our Work Performance reworked harness, flash DCU, pedal assembly, tack module, our E-fan relay kit, wiring, some wire for our fuel pump and fuel level, and battery cables. We'll use the OE battery cables. I already went ahead and put the spark plug wires, intake with the mass airflow on there. Cooling system's done, fuel system's done. I tested the fuel pump already, put some fuel in there. So we'll go ahead and start with the wiring next. All right, we're gonna start by putting our battery cables in first. These are the factory cables. So we'll use the factory bracket here to hold it on the oil pan. We'll mount our starter just so we can see how far our cable needs to go in. And then we'll secure this positive cable with this bracket. That's two little tabs to hold the cable inside this channel. Put those in. I'll have a tab on this inside. I'll slide into that hole, and then I'll take a screw on the other side. All right. That'll hold our battery cable there in place. All right. Now we'll lower it and get on the top. For the ground, we have a 13mm bolt that goes right in front of the motor mount there. Alright. We'll have one more ground on the battery cable here. This one you could attach to your radiator support. And then we'll need one more ground from the back of the block to the firewall. This one originally went to the factory fuse box. There was a red box that was here. I can't find it right now, but you would hook up the alternator and your battery cable in that red box. Next thing we'll do, we'll start working on getting our wire harness in there. We'll just put all of our tack module, fuse box, and ECU plugs on this side. This thick part of the harness is gonna run through this loom here. We'll start getting this kind of set up, and then we'll plug everything in. We got knock sensor, map, and cam position sensor here. We know these will go back there. We'll clip in our harness here so it kind of holds in place. Mass airflow. That one's always left extra long, just in case you're gonna run the mass airflow on this side or the driver's side. Put that there just so it's hooked up. This one will all go to the bottom. This will be our battery 12 volt starter lug, crank position sensor, and then this will be our starter signal to our solenoid. So we'll just start routing our harness as we go. This will be your speed sensor and transmission plug. These are gonna have to run back as well. So right now what we'll do is start hooking up some stuff. Let's see. This will be our ground to the back of the cylinder head. So push that one back there. We got our knock sensor. Plug that in. You got our cam position sensor. That'll be on the back. We got our map sensor. That'll be right here on top. Okay. These two are O2, so those will run back as well. We'll just drop them down behind the motor there. Cam position. Go out there as well. I'm gonna loop this one over on this side of the dipstick. So this will be our injectors. First we'll plug in the coil pack plug, bank 2. Has it on there, bank 2 coils. All right, that's plugged in. Now we got our series of injectors here, 2, 4, 6, 8. We'll start with 2 here. 2, 4, 6, and 8. And then the harness will be pretty much the length here for your throttle body. We'll run this harness through this little clip here, how it stays in place. This one through this side so we can get it through this clip on this side. Okay, hook my injector back up. All right. So pretty much let me just get this mass airflow plug out of the way. Pretty much the bank 2 on this side is already hooked up. We got our injectors hooked up, our coil packs hooked up. We got our map hooked up, knock sensor. We'll get back there and hook up to our cam position sensor. That'll be this one. And then I'll switch you guys back over there and we'll hook up the bank 1 side. All right, so for our bank 1 side, we ran our main harness here through this loom. Now we'll plug in our coils and injectors. We got 1 through 7 here. We got a coolant temp sensor. That'll run towards the front right there, right on the manifold. This one was damaged, so we'll need to get a new one. We'll run it under there. We'll plug right there. This one will loop through the bottom. So we'll start with our injectors. Injector 1. 3, 5, and 7. And then we'll run them through these little retaining clips so it holds the harness in place. thing we got our bank one coil plug. We'll hook that one up. And our alternator plug. That'll go up right here on top. I'm gonna run it through the body. All right, so on our bank one side, we already hooked up the alternator, our 1, 3, 5, and 7 injectors, our coil plug, and then last we will get to the camshaft position sensor. That'll be this plug here. The oil pressure sensor is not used. All right, so our bank one side is now fully hooked up. We got map sensor, knock sensor, injectors, coils, alternator, camshaft position sensor back there, a little yellow tab. Our coolant temp, we need to get a new one. This one was broken. So now that we're down here, we can hook up the rest of our plugs. This will be our transmission plug and our speed sensor. We'll start with those. And we got our bank 102. That one needs to run on the driver's side. Bank 102, bank 202. So let's get this harness on the opposite side. All right, bank 102's here, bank 202's here. Go ahead and disconnect the battery cable from the starter. Get the starter out of the way and hook up our crank position sensor. Crank position sensor wire plug would be this one. This would be to our starter solenoid, and the one with the bigger eyelet will be battery 12 volt on starter lug. Basically a constant 12 volt. All right, crank position sensors hooked up. So we go ahead and put our starter back on. And plug in the rest of the connections. This one will go with this terminal here from the battery, constant 12 volts. And the small eyelet, that will be the starter signal. Our O2 plugs ran on the right side. We got our bank 2 side on the passenger, bank 1 side laying there on the driver's side. We got our crank position sensor hooked up. That goes right behind the starter. We got our starter signal in there, and we got our battery to starter constant 12 hooked up. So pretty much done for the complete harness, other than plugging in those O2s. Our speed sensors there, transmission plugs there. All right, so we got 2 rolls of wire here. The blue wire we're gonna use for our fuel level sensor. This brown wire, it's a little thicker, we're gonna use for our 12 volt to our fuel pump. What I'll do is I'll tighten here and then just kind of measure it out. And that should be enough to get us all the way to the top. All right, we'll make our first two connections here. Our blue wire is going to be our fuel level. So on the actual 87 plug, that is the purple wire. Our power to fuel pump would be the gray wire, and our ground will ground to the frame there. All right, now we'll cut the plug. Make our connections. So purple would be our fuel level, which is going to now be our blue wire. And gray is our fuel pump power, which will now be our brown wire. Now we'll start running our harness towards the front. Mount a ground there. The screw was a little long, so I just cut it down. Ground's on there. We'll put some zip ties to hold this harness in place. And then we'll make our connections on top. All right, so back to the wiring. This is the 3 wires that come from the war harness. The green one is the fuel pump. The pink wire is key on 12 volts. This is our key on 12 volts from our bulkhead. Make sure that when you get your key on 12 volts and you go to start, you still have 12 volts to this wire. It should be key on 12 volts all the time. There's some wires in here that'll get 12 volts, and when you turn the key to the start position, it loses the 12 volts. So just make sure you have key on 12 volts anytime the ignition is turned on. This one here looks like a brown wire. This is our fuel level. This blue wire here, that is our oil pressure. The light green and dark green, that is our reverse signal. This one was manual, so our reverse signal was on the transmission. This purple wire, this is our start ignition. Once the ignition's pushed all the way forward, we'll get 12 volts here. From this junction here, we'll have constant 12 volts to the battery. So this one will go, it mounts on the firewall, and then this will run back all the way to our battery, 12 volt. And that's it. Really, the only 3 you need to hook up is your start, your key on 12 volts, and your constant 12 volts. The green wire will go straight to the fuel pump in the back, and that is now powered by our fuse box here. All right, now we got our fuel pump harness ran up here. The next thing we'll do is we'll make some connections and do a test fire. I'll make all our connections with these. They're super easy to install and take off. Once we get everything working, we'll shorten up the line, clean it all up, and put some butt connectors on there. All right, so green was fuel pump. We have our 2 wires right here already running from the tank. So fuel pump was our brown wire. We'll connect the green fuel pump to our brown wire. All right. Next we got our pink wire. That is our constant, that is our key on 12 volts. Make sure it's key on 12 volts all the time. Even when cranking, it should still be 12 volts there. Okay. Next we got our starter signal. That is a yellow wire. And on our bulkhead, it is the purple wire. Go ahead and hook that up. From our fusible link here, our little junction block, we got the constant 12. This goes directly to the battery. The key's turned on. Turn the key back. We'll just put this one on here for now. And that is our constant 12 volts. Those we'll put to the side right now. That's basically all you need to hook up. Start, key on 12 volts, fuel pump obviously, the 12 volts to the fuel pump, and your constant 12 volts here to your junction block. Next thing I need to do, I still haven't done, is ground the frame to the motor and then ground the motor to the cab. That's the last thing we need to do to test fire this engine. And we'll make some ground connections with some of these ground straps that I had laying around. So this one we'll find somewhere to mount this from the motor to the cab. Alright, I'll bolt it somewhere right here, right below the junction block. Alright, our ground secured. Fuel pump primed, all the accessories turned on. I'll prime it about one more time just to fill the fuel system, and it should fire off. Now we know our harness is plugged in right, everything's working. I tested the lights already, lights, reverse, brake lights, they're all working. Next thing we'll do, we will lift the truck. I need to make some transmission cooler lines, and then we'll be able to fill all the fluids and let it run for a little bit. So next thing we'll get on is our transmission cooler lines. We'll pull off the original fittings and put in our AN adapters. The original transmission line fittings will be replaced with these 6 AN adapters. Okay, now we'll make our lines and hook up our oil cooler on the radiator support. That angle seems to fit just right there. Second line. We'll go ahead and tie these right around our battery cable, and then we'll secure it. Okay. All right, we got our cooler. We'll make some little tabs, that way we could bolt it down. All right, now that our transmission cooler is hooked up, we'll add the rest of our fluids and we'll let this this motor idle, warm up. All right, so we got our new drive line in there. The only thing left to hook up down here would be the bank 202, bank 102, exhaust. All right, so we got the drive line in there. We got our transmission cooler mounted. Our wires are still hanging there, but we'll go ahead and put it through the gears and roll it off the lift.